every moment tests you, every action defines you. This is the prestigious initiative where mindset becomes muscle and character becomes legacy. I'm Chris Bean, martial artist, coach, and relentless believer in growth. If you're here to sharpen your edge, lead with integrity, and build a life that echoes beyond your years, you're home. You can find the podcast on social media at PrestigiouSPod. You can find me at Chris Bean Official, and the email for the podcast is prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com. This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean. Today's guest is John Solleder, a 40-year veteran of entrepreneurship, network marketing, and top earner in 4 different companies, and mentor to thousands. John's story is not about an overnight success. It's about building disciplines, mindsets, and systems that pay dividends year after year. Our conversation, we're going to be breaking down how you achieve long-term success without burnout, and why personal development is a fuel for growth, not to mention how to balance while still pursuing excellence. This one is going to be amazing. John, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I can't wait. We got a lot of topics to get into.
Now, John, why would somebody want to listen to our conversation here today?
You know, I'm one of those people that's actually walked the walk. I was raised in very humble beginnings. My dad was an electrician. My mom was a secretary. So I did not come from business people. I started my first business in college. I mean, if I count, raking leaves and that kind of stuff, I really started when I was about 12. But in terms of an actual business structure, I was 20. And I've been in business for myself ever since. And I've gone through all of those cycles. You think about somebody starts a business in 1983, all the ups and downs of the economy, interest rates, presidents. I started, Jimmy Carter was still president when I started, and then Ronald Reagan, and then, Bush first, and Clinton, Obama, Biden, Trump twice. So, you go through all of those different cycles. We went through 9/11, for example, horrible time in our country, COVID, 2008 economic downturn, hugely affected all business in America and throughout the world for that matter. So, I've been through all of that, and somehow I sound like that Elton John song, right? But I'm still standing. And some people would have given up a long time ago. That's not me. I'm a fighter.
So that's a good point. Why, after 42 years, that's what a long arc. What are the things that have kept you in the game where so many other people would have burned out by now?
I think it's a few things. First of all, I'll talk current in a minute, but let me talk overall. Okay. I have a love of people. I've never loved money. I've used money. I like money. I enjoy money. I enjoy what money can do for my family. I enjoy the 63 countries I visited in over the last 40 years. All the opportunities that money, unfortunately, you have to participate in a lot of these things. But I've never been driven purely by money. I've been driven more by the building process. And to me, the building process is building people. When I see a single mom, for example, that's struggling to pay her bills, and I coach her, and all of a sudden, a year, 2 years later, she's making more money than she ever could at a job. And she's still there for her kids, baseball lesson or piano lesson after school. To me, that's invaluable. And when those people come back and thank me for helping them along the way, that's not something money can buy. Okay, those are life experiences. And I've had that happen so many times in these 4 decades that I've been in business, where I've helped people, coached people, and they've come back and said, hey, I did what you taught me, and man, it worked. Not that it's easy, by the way, folks. Don't misread what I'm saying here. None of this is easy. These people all had to, roll up their sleeves and go to work on what I taught them, but they did it. And it worked. Currently, why am I excited currently? And we were talking about this before we started. We're living in such a dynamic time with technology. AI is changing the world. Now, AI can defeat you if you're in certain professions that will be replaced by AI and are being, as we're having this conversation, there are people losing jobs because of AI. Well, what are you going to do? Get rid of AI? No. you're going to adopt AI into your business and figure out how to make this amazing technology work on your behalf. Instead of working against it, you're going to work with it. And that's kind of what I figured out about a year ago, is that I want to use AI for everything from doing some of my writing, because I can write things a whole lot faster. I mean, these two books took me years to write. Now I can write a book in, about 4 hours, for example. I can use it for direct mail, for multiple business ventures that either I'm involved with or I work with as a consultant for other people, where it's like, okay, let me use AI as a delivery system, okay, for direct mail. Very, very efficient, very, very quick, okay, tool, for example. Um, so utilizing the tool. So that really has me excited, because I think the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to see fortunes made by ordinary people that otherwise would not have been able to make them. Forget, Bill Gates, forget Elon Musk, forget those guys are already there. They're just going to get bigger. They'll be trillionaires. Okay. The guy that started NVIDIA, they'll be trillionaires. If they're not already, they'll be there. What about you? What about me? What about the average person listening to our podcast today that says, hey, I'm marketing whatever, I got to market it better? Well, you need to understand AI. You need to work with it. And that's not just Chat GPT, by the way. You got to do a deep dive. There's all sorts of systems with AI that you can get involved with. Do your homework. Okay. I'm not going to suggest any particular one. I work with a few different people in that space. If you want to reach me, I can make it a contact for you. But I'm not here to promote selling something on AI. What I'm promoting is you need to adopt AI in your business life, or you're going to be left behind. One of my colleagues uses the expression AI or die. I don't know if it's quite to that point, but at the end of the day, it's not far off, because, 17,000, Uber drivers will soon be out of work as a result, just in Las Vegas, Nevada, as one example. Last Christmas, Amazon laid off about the same amount of people in one of their facilities, that they replaced them with robots. So at the end of the day, this is a reality. It may not be a nice reality, it's a harsh reality. And you can't politicize it. It's not a Democratic problem or a Republican problem. Okay. It's an economic situation. Okay. With this evolution, you need to participate in it. If you participate in it, like I said, there's going to be fortunes earned, and there's going to be businesses that are so much better and so much more efficient than they've ever been previously. Be one of those people, be a leader in it. So that's why at 64, I get up early in the morning, I go to the gym, and after that, it's all day, various business projects. But every one of them includes AI in terms of what we do and the direction that we coach other people, frankly, to utilize.
Okay, so AI is such an interesting thing because you're right, it's going to be changing the job market in the next 2 to 5 years. Like it's that close. It's right here, even this year. How does somebody that's in college right now, they're going to college for whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. When they get out into the job market is going to be wildly different. If that thing that they're going to college for is even still a job, it's going to look wildly different. The people, the coaches, the professionals, the teachers that they have now, they don't know what it's going to be like. They can't teach them how to adapt and pivot into that system. What can they do, these students that are going to university now, what can they do to help to prepare themselves to move into a job market that is where they're actively competing against AI?
Well, first of all, what they need to do is work with it, not against it. Right? Go with the grain, not against the grain. Okay. Don't be contrarian. You're not going to defeat AI. Okay. AI is what it is. Interestingly enough, I went to a thing that Steve Aoki, the famous disc jockey who also does some stuff in brain health, was hosting a couple of weeks ago in Las Vegas. And he had one of the guys, Ray, and I'm going to forget Ray's last name for a minute, he's a world famous scientist. But Steve was interviewing him, and Ray put up this schematic of how many calculations per second AI is currently doing. And the part that was interesting was the fact that he said the calculations are faster than the actuaries or all the other mathematicians that created that table thought they were going to be. In other words, AI is ahead of where they thought it was going to be, which means as we get to the end of 2027, 2028, There's all kinds of projections of job loss. There will be job loss. So to answer your question, what should a young person do? All right, if you're not studying machine learning, because maybe that's not your thing, okay, that's okay. Not everybody can be a machine learning engineer or application scientist. Okay, it's not for everybody. But at the end of the day, understanding how to use what those people create, and that's all I'm doing is I'm just realizing all of the capabilities that AI has that I can replace functions of my business that I can utilize AI in. Like I said, like direct mail, for example. There was a time in my life where I created direct mail pieces that I wrote that then I'd have to take to a print shop. Then we'd have to collate. Then we'd mail them out, and people would mail us back a card that said they were interested. And then we'd go back to the post office a second time, and we'd mail them a little cassette tape with information about our specific product and business. By the way, that worked, but that was super expensive. That was about $3,000 per thousand, by the way. Okay, by the time you had the list, the printing, the postage, etc., about $3,000. Today, I can do that same amount of people for less than $300, roughly a tenth. So at the end of the day, I could say I could spend that same money and reach 10 times more people if I wanted to. Or I could say, hey, let me marginalize it and do it in sectors so I can handle the lead flow. Okay, that's how we have to think in business, is how do I apply it to my particular business, whatever it is that I'm selling, marketing, or promoting, how do I fit it in? Secondly, there are certain functions of all businesses that need to be done by human beings. For example, we can't have two robots on here and have the conversation you and I are having. Okay? But we can have our emails correspond to each other through AI, as an example. I'll use another one. Let me give a real life one. Everybody can relate to this one, right? We've all cut our lawn at some point. So many years ago, when I was living in New York State, I was cutting my lawn. Ironically, my first mentor called me that afternoon. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're out cutting the lawn." He goes, "Why are you cutting your lawn?" Now, I was already the top distributor in a particular company. I was making insane money, about $2,000 a day then. This is in the 80s. And he said, "You can more than afford a landscaper." I said, "That's true." Now, I happen to like to cut my lawn. I was on airlines all week and hotels, so I kind of like to cut the lawn, which is fine, by the way, if you're doing it for exercise. However, he made a great point. He said, "What could you pay a landscaper for to cut your lawn?" I said, "About $50 an hour." And for a guy to come and do a good job. And it's a big lawn, so let's say it's 2 hours. So it cost me $100. How much do you make per hour? Well, if I took that 2,000, took out 8 hours for sleep, I don't know, a few $100 per hour, right? I'd be ahead of the game working my business in those 2 hours as opposed to being out there cutting the lawn. Now, once again, if I'm doing it because I want the exercise and the fresh air, great. But if I'm doing it because I'm thinking I'm saving $100, that's the wrong way to think. The right way to think is, how do I do everything I can do through AI? I do. The things that only I can do, have conversations with real prospects, for example, that only I can do. Let me spend more time doing that and less time writing content, less time doing all the other functionality of my particular business. And once again, whatever your business is, folks, as you're listening to this, once again, say, how many things could I maybe offload to AI that then gives me those extra couple hours per day to talk to people? For example, I was with a group of insurance agents last night here in Dallas. And some of them are very, very, very successful, 40, 50, $60,000 a month earners, a month, not year, okay, making that kind of money in the insurance business. And you think about that and you say, okay, 30-day month, if a guy's making 60 grand, so he's making $2,000 a day, take out weekends or whatever, but assuming he was working a 30-day month, making $2,000 a day, that's good money, real good money. But what if he was able to offload some stuff on the AI and he was able to see two more clients a day and on average one bought? That 2,000 now becomes what, 3,000? The guy just increased his income 50%. He didn't pay 50% to AI to do that. And this is the way we have to reprogram our brains constantly to be thinking, especially in small business. Now, 99.5% of business in America is small business, right? For every Walmart and Costco, there's a lot of little Johns out there and Chris's with our own little businesses that we're selling widgets of some sort, okay, or services of some sort to the general public. So we have to start thinking that way. How do I apply it to make my business more productive? And maybe that just means it saves me time. So, you got three young kids, for example. We were kind of sharing notes on that. I grew up in when my kids grew up in hockey rinks. They were skaters and hockey players, and maybe I spend more time at the rink that I couldn't spend otherwise. Maybe it's more family time. Whatever it is, use the AI to basically offload a lot of that work that it can do, and you do what only you can do as a human being within your respective business and family.
Well, what AI does is if you leverage it correctly, it gives you a catalog of employees that are designed to do specific jobs. And if you do it well, designed to do those specific jobs as top earners in their fields, because you can tell it to act like whatever it is, then it assumes that role. And then you have a top earner in that field of email design. Okay, great. Pow, put them to work. You have a top earner in the field of generating scripts for you to read on social media, whatever those jobs are that you need fulfilled. You program a AI to be that person for you. Then you multiplied yourself. And the other thing that I think it does too is, as a small business owner, you don't know everything. You don't have all of the answers. So either you have to pay somebody to do these other things that you don't know how to do very well, or you have to pay with your time and do it poorly until you can learn to do it correctly, or you leverage AI to teach you how to do the thing and then you can be better at it, or you leverage AI just to do the thing because it's capable of doing whatever that thing is. I think you're right, though. There are certain intrinsic things across any job that a human, at least at this point, this day and age, is solely capable of and should really be the person who actually does it as an actual human. There are lots of other things that AI is not only adept at doing, but can do far better or more efficiently than a human can, or any human should be able to. And if you're the small business owner, if you can leverage those AI to do that and you pay one fee for whatever the service is, or you pay a couple small fees, that's far and away better than paying that person's salary or these team of people's salary, because you have a team of AI employees that's behind you.
Exactly, exactly. And it's just, it's just getting people's thinking right. That's all it is. Once again, don't be afraid of AI. AI is not here to destroy humanity. It should be here to help humanity.
Well, I think the
If
hard
we,
part with that is we've been programmed through movies to believe that AI is here to kill us. AI is here to take on humanity and squash us. And because of that, we've grown up to believe that that is the negative future that we're going to be walking down. Where in reality, we don't necessarily know what AI, one, we don't know what AI is capable of. We don't know really the nuts and bolts of how it does the things that it does so well. Even some really smart people that are building it don't necessarily know how to computate the things that it's doing the way that it's doing, because it's kind of run wild in that, and to a certain extent. And the other thing is AI right now, we sort of have an opportunity to steer it into different directions. So if we are using AI the correct way, we could use AI to potentially help us expand our life, as opposed to AI ending our life.
exactly. No, couldn't have said it better. I agree 1,000%. And look, it's like any tool, right? Like I remember, I've been in business so long that we started out. Okay, I'll go through this fast, right? We started out word of mouth for our business in 1983. A couple years later, stores like Kinko's and Business Depot, Home Depot, what's it called? One of the business stores.
Home Depot.
Mitt Romney was one of the investors in it. But anyway, those stores start to pop up, bricks and mortar. Well, all of a sudden, you could take a flyer, okay, and you could have it, four part flyer, right, saying the same thing. Bring it to the printer at one of those stores, and instead of bringing it to the old print shop where it costs you, let's say, $100 for 1,000 flyers, all of a sudden it costs you $25, and the guy cut them, so you had 4,000 flyers.
Hmm.
So in theory, you had 4 times more volume of flyers you could put out, okay, for a quarter of the cost, because they were able to do stuff at scale, right? Then a few years later, cassette tape duplication becomes a big business. This is about 1988, 89. Okay, all of a sudden, everybody's making cassette tapes. Let me tell you my story about my whatever, my great nutritional supplement. I actually launched one of the companies I'm still working with 29 years later. I actually launched a cassette tape like that. And it said, why the medical discovery of the 21st century led me to leave another business I was in that I had passive income in to start from zero because I felt so strong about this product. I interviewed 3 doctors on there. Everybody started mailing these things out. We mailed out 100,000 tapes. Well, guess what? You mail out 100,000 anything, you're going to launch a business. That business still exists 29 years later. So did it work? Yeah. Now, today, would I want to go? I'd have to find a tape processor to begin with. I don't know if there are any. There was one here in Plano, Texas in 1997. But the point being, it's like it worked then because it was the tool for that day. A few years later, of course, it evolves into DVDs. Inexpensive, right? For about $2, you could have a DVD, an actual video telling your product story and your company story, right? And on and on and on. And then, of course, we got into, Zoom comes along during COVID, right? So all of a sudden we can have calls like we're having right now with hundreds of people from all over the world. Wow. That was another step along the highway, so to speak, of marketing. And on and on and on. Now all of a sudden AI. Okay, now will AI be replaced? No, AI, by its very theory, is the evolution of the internet. It's really what it is. I mean, it's just another step along that highway. Will it get better in its evolution? Absolutely, it already is. Okay, 5 years from now, if we were having this conversation, who knows? Maybe we'll be having it by watch or something. I don't know, right? Maybe I'm talking to my finger, you're talking to your finger. Maybe we won't even need to talk. The robots will talk. I don't know, but here's what I do know. That evolutionary process in marketing shouldn't scare you. It should excite you. You should get up early in the morning and go, oh my God, I'm living at this time where there's all of this stuff. All I need to do is learn how to use a little bit of it. You don't have to become an expert, a little tiny bit of it, and apply it to my particular business, whatever that business happens to be. And you will be more successful. Now, did I say you're going to be successful in 30 days? No. You're going to have to make an investment. You're going to spend, and I don't mean just capital investment. By the way, the capital investment on this thing is very small, but you're going to have to spend the time to figure out what fits your particular business model. Okay, because there's lots of choices out there, like there is with anything, right? So that's all I'm telling people, but there's so much great information, and it's such an exciting time to be alive, and an exciting time to be in business. I mean, if you told me 40 years ago that I could pick up my phone and I could talk to people in other countries for free. Because 40 years ago, I built a downline in New Zealand and Australia, for example, early on in my network marketing career. And I remember I used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning in New York to do a quick phone call once a week. And my phone bill was like $150 for like a 15-minute phone call to New Zealand. And by the way, this was before speaker phones. Everybody went to this one woman's house, and it was like, I don't know, 5 o'clock in the afternoon there. So I could talk to them. I mean, that's what we've evolved to, where with WhatsApp, I can talk to people. I talked to people in the Philippines this morning. I talked to people in Germany this morning already. You know what I'm saying? And it didn't cost me a nickel. Right. So, I mean, that's the world we're living in. That's for an old man like me that's spent his whole life in marketing. That's exciting. But if you're your age, or somebody even like my son who's 21, man, it's like the stuff you're going to have to use. I mean, look, if you don't make money with these tools, you did something wrong. That's the way I look at it.
Now, John, we were talking before we got on about podcasting, and you have a couple of podcasts, in fact, or one podcast that has evolved or pivoted a couple times. How are you using AI within your podcast?
Well, a couple of ways. One thing we're doing is we're actually using it to outreach with similar words that are consistent with my podcast. Okay, similar words like, small business, side hustle, all that kind of stuff. Words that are common. So somebody doesn't want to interview me, for example, if they have a show about knitting, because I don't know anything about knitting. But if they want to talk small business, et cetera, like it matches up. It does kind of a word match that, okay, this person's podcast is consistent with what you talk about. So it gets me to be a guest on other people's shows. Okay. Conversely, it gets me, and I'll be inviting you as well, by the way, to be on our show, because one of the things about podcasting is we're sharing audiences.
Hmm.
Okay. We're not competing. It's not like you're competing in podcasting. You're
Yes.
sharing because you've got great content, for example. Other podcasters have great content. Well, my audience needs, yeah, they listen to me. Okay, I got great stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm not the only voice out there. There's all these different voices from all of these different industries that people can hear from once again to grow themselves. Because to me, podcasting is once again along that line of self-development.
Hmm.
Why do you listen to podcasts? Because you want to learn something from somebody else. And I'll give you an example of how big podcasting is becoming. You probably know this, but some of your audience may not. During the election, Barron Trump told his dad, Dad, you need to get on podcasts. And his dad initially was, I don't want to do that for. Like I'm on Fox and all these other things. And when he told him, he said, Hey, Dad, 35 and under, they're not listening to Fox. They're not listening to MSNBC. They're not listening to CNN. They don't watch those stations. But by the way, my three kids, not one of them owns a TV. So it's true. They're not watching those stations. Okay. Either by choice or they just don't watch TV. So how do you reach them? Podcasting. Well, Trump did over 100 podcasts. Kamala Harris did 4 or 5. Trump, reached those young people that voted for him. Okay. Whether you like Trump or hate Trump, from a marketing standpoint, it was a brilliant move. As we get into 2028, you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see politicians reaching out to people like you and I and saying, hey, you got on average 4, 5, 6,000 people listening to you every week. I want to talk to those people.
Hmm.
I want to get my message out there. Whether we agree or disagree with their message, I'll certainly welcome them, either party. Hopefully there'll be a third party by then. Who knows? I think we need one, but that's another podcast. But yeah, podcasting to me is a big thing. So if you want to find my podcast, it's under my name. It's either John_Solleder, or you can just use John Solleder on YouTube or on Rumble. Also, Leaving Nothing to Chance was the original name of the show. I also sometimes host podcasts for Top Doctor Magazine because I've got a background in science also. So I do some of their podcasts for Top Doc Magazine. I also team up with a guy in Las Vegas for the Human Longevity Show also. So you'll find me under a bunch of different banners. Some of which aren't mine, by the way. They're other people's. They just asked me to kind of either co-host, or there might be a subject I know more about than the host does, and they'll ask me to sit in and kind of take it on for them, especially if it's in the medical world, because that sometimes can be a slippery slope.
Okay, so you talked about people listening to podcasts as a way to further their personal growth. And I think that personal growth and self-development are so important and often overlooked, especially by the entrepreneurs that are out in the world now. They're neglecting that kind of side of it, and they're wondering why their business isn't succeeding. I think that there's a direct relation to that. So in your aspiration, in your eyes, what are some self-help or self-development practices that are non-negotiable for you?
First of all, okay, reading at least 30 minutes a day. You have to read. Okay, good content, not Harlequin romances. Stuff that's relevant to your business or your life. Okay, for example, what role did self-development play in my life? Okay, April 83, I start my first business. May 83, Ronald Reagan comes to my college commencement, talks about the fact that way back in 1932, during the Depression years, he went back to a swimming hole right there in Illinois, where you are, to be a lifeguard. And he met a successful businessman, and he said to him, how do you become successful? And the successful businessman said, you find a business you're interested in, and then you find a mentor to teach it to you. Now, in Reagan's case, he liked broadcasting. He became a broadcaster for an affiliate of the Chicago Cubs. Somebody heard him from Westinghouse. One thing led to another, wound up in California, and the rest, as they say, is history. But good lesson. So from the president, I heard, find a mentor. All of a sudden, I start realizing that I made $800 my very first month in business. Okay. And by the way, in 1983, $800 was $800 because nobody had credit cards. So people paid you cash. You had 800 real dollars in your pocket. That wasn't all profit, by the way. That was like gross profit. But regardless, I said, wait a minute. I'm kind of getting mentored by the people I'm working with in direct selling. Interesting. June of 83, I go to my first actual meeting of any kind. By the way, I didn't even own a suit at the time. Okay, like I literally had to go down to Kmart. Kmart was still in business. I bought a Kmart suit for like $40 or something. Anyway, I go to this meeting up in Hartford, and the fellow doing the meeting becomes really my first mentor in the direct selling industry, a guy by the name of Larry Thompson. And Larry says, for things to change, you have to change. And for things to get better, you have to get better. Well, see, at that point in my life, I was still of the opinion that, who was president, who was governor, who my parents were, who my girlfriend was, who my sisters were, was important. All of a sudden, when that guy said that, it resonated with me that, wait a minute, I can't change any of that. Those people are who they are, good, bad, or different. What I can change is me, how I think, how I act. So all of a sudden, I fell in love with my library card. And I went every time. I'd have a free hour. I wouldn't be selling. I wouldn't be working. I go to the library and I would just pick out a title. Okay. Anything to do with self-help, self-development, right? They didn't call it self-development back then. They called it self-help. And I found books by Mary Kay. I found books by Earl Nightingale. I found books by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, various other authors. Okay. Charlie Tremendous Jones. Okay. All of these people had a story to tell. And every one of their stories was relevant, but they also were intertwined with what they did during difficult circumstances. And every one of them had difficult circumstances, by the way. None of these people were raised, with a silver spoon in their mouth. They all had to overcome different adversities in their lives and careers. So I just became an early adapter, if you will, of self-development. A few years later, I met Jim Rohn, started to really get to know him and follow his work. And Bob Proctor eventually. I knew Bob a little bit as well, and Doug Weed. Unfortunately, all these guys are dead now. But every one of them, I spent time with, and by the way, spent money to meet these people. Went to things they were doing that I could meet them at, that I could pick their brain at. Okay, once again, the commitment to investing in me. Ben Franklin had a great saying. He said, take the coins from your pocket and empty them into your mind will refill your purse many times. And I actually believe that. And I still believe that all these years later. But that was a self-development. So today, here's the difference. Today, if you're not a big reader, now I still suggest you read, but if you're not a big reader, find a podcast, your podcast, my podcast. Okay. Just in the last couple of weeks, I had, if you're in selling anything, I had the top guy from Legal Shield, Brian Carruthers, okay, $2 million in earnings last year on my show. I'm about to publish a thing with Joe Leno. Joe Leno for 4 years straight was the #1 salesman at Electrolux. Okay. These guys are guys that, they've gone through the battles, you know what I mean? To become #1 in companies like that. Not easy products to sell, frankly. Okay. So, I've got people like that. You've got people like that. Others have people like that. Listen to stuff you're interested in. I'm interested in health and nutrition. I listen to, Rip Esselstyn all the time, for example. I listen to his show. I listen to Dr. Michael Greger. Whatever it is you're interested in. If you're interested in Bitcoin or you're interested in whatever, there's shows that are geared towards these criterias that you're interested in that you can listen and gain free knowledge. Jim Rohn, let me go back to Jim Rohn for a second. I'm having lunch with Jim here many years ago in Dallas. And I actually worked with the guy who kind of co-authored The Seasons of Life, a guy named Ron Reynolds. So Ron invites myself and a guy named Charlie Regis to lunch with Jim. So we're sitting at a restaurant, probably not 4 blocks from where I live now. Well, I didn't live here then, but I lived in Dallas, but I didn't live here. Anyway, long story short, we're having lunch. And during the course of the lunch, Jim looks over at me, and he always called you by your last name. So he said, Mr. Solleder, you're still young enough to be helped. I'm not sure about these 2 old guys, but his point was, you're not taking notes. So I run to my car and I get my what I call a day timer. I mean, it's a diary, call it what you want, a way to take notes, right? A notebook. I come back in, I sit down and I start to take notes. And he goes, John, just don't make arbitrary notes. He goes, my point isn't that everything I say you need to write down. He goes, let me give you an example. This waiter who's taking care of us, he comes over and he says something so profound and life changing or business changing. And then he goes away. And you get home tonight and you say, wow, what did that guy say? And you come back the next day and he quit. You can't get in touch with him. Or better yet, you come back and you say, hey, yesterday we were having lunch. And the guy gives you a blank stare and says, well, I took care of 40 people at lunch. I don't know what I said. It's gone forever. So Jim's point was, if you write it down, it becomes yours. Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, right? I mean, he actually bought McDonald's, but I mean, the developer of McDonald's, right? The legendary Ray Kroc, right? Kind of created the franchise model that's been so successful. Ray Kroc had a thing when he was running the company. I don't know if they still have it, but they used to give a scholarship to people with good ideas. There was a young guy who was throwing out the rolls every night. And I guess he said to his mom, I guess he took some home. He said to his mom, hey, Mom, make an egg sandwich for me in the morning. And he said, boy, this is a good idea. McDonald's should sell this. He wrote Ray Kroc a letter. Ray Kroc gave him some kind of financial, scholarship as a result. So see, good ideas don't necessarily just come from the Jim Rohns and the Bob Proctors and the Tony Robbins and all of these messiahs of thought that we think of. And they certainly do. But when you get around those guys, you find out that their ideas came from all of these other people. Okay. So why not write them down and make them yours? So take good notes. If you came to my office here, you'd find literally books and books and books and tablets with things that people have said, thoughts, ideas, 99% of which I'll never use. But the 1% I have used has made me, financially successful time and time again in every environment, every economy, every circumstance. Where I figured it out, and I have not figured it out alone. I figured it out with the help of so many people.
Well, I think that the thing that people miss, one, you're right, that people don't take notes nowadays. And that is, let's say it's a lost art, because we used to take notes in class, in school. Nowadays, I don't know that they do that anymore. They just hit record on whatever they have, or they're trying to write word for word what the teacher is saying, which is definitely not the right way. But the next thing is, for me, when I take notes, what I'm doing is I'm taking notes on the things that stand out. And then when I go back and I ruminate on those thoughts, what it does is it connects other thoughts that I've had kind of loose-ended in my head. And when that old thought connects with a new thought, boom, then something actually amazing happens, because I'm using this thought that I've had or I picked up from somebody else with this new thought that I've heard just today. I connect those, and once that connection happens, that's where the magic actually works at. And
Yep.
people don't think about these things this way. And you're talking about reading, whether you're reading, somebody's book that is wild and famous and did all these amazing things that you want to learn about, or you're listening to somebody's podcast. I think that the thing that we're missing is to come at that with questions to answer. Like, why am I reading about Benjamin Franklin? What is it particularly that makes him stand out to me? Right? And then as you're reading, you are generating thoughts, you're generating more questions. And I like to write in my books, right? I have books and I'm writing all kinds of stuff in. And the book, especially as I'm writing it, is almost like my conversation with the author. And as if I can ask that author these questions, because I'm reading, why this? I'm circling, underline. Oh, this is an interesting thing. What are they going to do next from here? And as I'm writing those things, again, as if I could sit in front of the author and they're telling me about the book instead of me reading it. I'm having a conversation with them. Well, pause for a second. I have a question about this. Tell me about that. And that's kind of where my brain goes. And because you can't often sit down with authors of the books that most people are reading, or sit down and have conversations like this on a podcast, you have to have that thought in your mind, that question in your mind, and either you continue reading and hope to find the answer in that reading, or you let that thought sit there for a little bit longer. You let it move into the subconscious, and then it can really do some work, because once it's in the subconscious, it's like I'm sure you've had times where you're out walking or you've been in the shower and poof, You've had the answer to that problem that's been bugging you for so long, and it's not because you were sitting thinking and dwelling on whatever it was. It's because you took it out of the actual conscious and moved it to the subconscious. And once it's there, man, that's where some stuff works, right? It's back there, it's working, and then boom, it comes to attention. There's your answer. You weren't necessarily actively thinking or lifting or doing any of the work for it, but it brought you that answer. So as we're listening to podcasts, as we're reading these books, as you're having conversations with people in everyday life, yes, absolutely, take down and write down those important things, but also come at it with questions that you are answering. Like as you're having a conversation with somebody, what questions why are you having this conversation with this person? What are you looking to gain out of it? And I think the other part of that is, in today's culture, in today's society, we assume that we know everything. Whereas we should assume that the person who we're talking with knows more than you know. And if you come at every conversation, every interaction that you have on a daily basis, assuming that somebody that you're talking with knows more than you know, then you can humble yourself to be able to learn something from that person. And once we are in that state, man, learning happens all the time. But if we come at everything like, oh, I know everything, I'm the king. No, you can't. You can't do that, because then you never ever progress. You never get any further. No, moreover than that, nobody wants to talk to you because you're a jerk.
Well, C.S. Lewis said, we read to know that we're not alone.
Mm.
And I think, of course, he didn't know about podcasting in his generation, but I think if he were alive today, he'd be a fan of podcasts, just for what you just said there. And there's so many authoritative people that you've never heard of that you say, wow, this guy knows his stuff. Or he knows enough stuff that I don't know, that all of a sudden I got a little bit more education. Make it yours. I mean, and that's the power to me of podcasting, is to hear all of these different podcasters and their guests talk about so many different things that I don't know a thing about, or I do know a thing about, but I want to know more.
Mm.
Right? Because it's expansive, right? And the mind is meant to be expanded. Right. I mean, the reason why we read, the reason we listen to podcasts is our brain, it's elastic. You know what I mean? Like, we're supposed to be able to expand it. Right. So you can't think just one way. You have to listen to different things. Right. Whether you agree or disagree 100% doesn't even really matter. It just matters that you listen and you get the content of what that person's saying. And so to answer your question, I mean, reading is important. Exercise is important. Meditation is important. Okay, like I'm not one of these people who meditates 30 minutes a day, but sometimes I'll just sit in this chair here and I'll close down the world for about 5 minutes. I'll close my eyes, and my wife thinks I'm asleep because I'm getting old. And I'm like, no, I'm thinking. And all of a sudden, that gray matter goes to work. And it's like, what if instead of doing this, we tweak that? Now, where does that come from? Does it come from God? Does it come from my subconscious? Does it come from, I mean, if it's a good thought, I'm gonna attribute it to God. Okay, in my case, it's like, okay, thank you, God. Okay, for a good idea today. Okay, but it's like all of a sudden you're quiet with the world, right? Jesus had a thought closet. Muhammad had a thought closet. Gandhi had a thought closet, right? I mean, all the luminaries in the world, in the history of the world, all had a place to go. Let me shut down all the noise. And they didn't have cell phones ringing every 5 minutes. Right? But let me just be by myself and think. And that's an important part of my day, is that I take that time. And it's not a specific time. It's not like, 8:05 every morning. It's like, no, it's kind of like, okay, I had my workout, I had my morning read, I had my breakfast. Okay, now let me just kind of, sit here and be quiet and think, what is it I need to accomplish today?
Okay,
What am I working?
I want to kind of underline that for a second, because meditation is something I've done a number of different times in a number of different ways. But I've been most recently been doing for about 10 to 15 minutes, and not even on a consistent basis. But I try to do 2 or 3 times a week. Where, like you, I'm not like the normal. Let's see, the normal way that people think about meditation is you want to sit and clear your mind, which is wildly difficult to do, because your mind is always going, it's always talking, it's always has that question or idea that's there. But if you do it like what you're talking about, and this is similar to what I've been doing, is you sit quietly, close your eyes, you let the world kind of fade away, but you think about a specific topic, idea, or question that you want an answer for. If you can do that, You might not get the answer right then. You might not get the answer that week or that month, maybe even not that year. But if you do that, what's going to happen is that's going to prime your brain to be thinking about this, whether the thought, like you said, is coming from your subconscious or it's coming from God or a connection of all of those things. You're going to have an answer. It might not be the answer that you're hoping for or wanting, but you're going to have an answer. And I think that mysticism, the new agey type of people, they think about meditation like it's you have to sit and calm and quiet and there's nothing and you have to do it for hours and hours and hours in order to have some sort of benefit. That's not necessarily true. But if you can sit and actually think about a thought or think about a question that you would like to actually have the answer to, the answer will present itself to you. Whether it's there, right there, or it's in the next conversation you have, or it's in next week's conversation, but somehow, some way, that answer is going to come to you.
It's funny you say that because that's exactly what happens 9 out of 10 times is that when I quiet myself, an idea comes. But I have to quiet myself, but my brain's working. My brain's on full tilt. I mean, all those synapses are going like this. You know what I mean? Like they're not asleep. They're working. And I want them working, by the way. If they stop working, that's another problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I want that. And one of the things too, and let me just talk to your older audience for a minute. Keep your brain working as you get older.
Mm.
I don't care if you got $1 billion, start a new business, start a new venture, get behind a new bunch of entrepreneurs, do something where you're going to constantly use this thing. Okay, because I read a lot about the brain and brain health, and I talk to a lot of people in the medical world that are working with the brain. You stop using your brain, you will go into dementia or Alzheimer's at a very premature time in your life. The people who are using their brains, and you look at current examples, Charlie Munger, 2 weeks before he passed away. Okay, Charlie Munger ran Berkshire Hathaway for Warren Buffett. 99, he's doing an interview with Becky Quick on CNBC, and she's asking him about this company. He's telling her the financials of these companies, nothing in front of them. He's not making it up. You go and you fact check and you go, oh yeah, okay, that stock is at this price or that price and valuation. 99, still using his brain. Passed away a couple weeks later. You look at Warren Buffett himself. 90 some odd years old. A couple of my heroes in the health world, Dr. Colin Campbell and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, in their 90s, still out doing seminars all over the world. Okay, so my point is, use this thing that you were given, use it constantly, and don't always do it out of need. Do it out of experience. Many years ago, I worked for a short time for Metropolitan Life in New York. And I worked with a guy named Mehdi Fakazadi, real name, Persian name. And Mr. Mehdi, we used to call him. He was a real gentleman, nice man. Anyway, I go and I write a policy at about 5 a.m. on a contractor. So I bring the policy to the office, right? And you got to submit it, right? And of course, nobody's there. It's like 6 a.m. Nobody's at work yet. And I noticed the light in his office is on. Go over. Oh, Mr. Mehdi, morning. How are you? Oh, I'm good. What are you doing here so early? Oh, I just wrote a policy. Number one earner at Metropolitan Life, by the way. Huge company. So we get talking a little bit. And I was intimidated, to be honest with you. I'm in my 20s. He's in his 60s. He's a legend in the industry. I'm just a kid. And I said, why are you still working so hard? And he said, well, it's real simple. When I came to America, not speaking much English, I had to work so hard on my English and on my sales skills. Now, after 30 years of doing it every single day, I'm really good at it. I'm really proficient at it. Business gets easier as you get older because you know what to do. And I think about that now that I'm at that time in my life. And I won't say that business is easier, but it's more doable than it's ever been because of all the tools, all the systems, all the stuff we're talking about, from AI to, you name it. Okay, things have gotten easier. So why not take advantage of them? But once again, to your older listeners, find something. And once again, if it's out of need, that's a different story. But if it's out of, well, hey, I'm retired and I got plenty of money coming in every month and I'm enjoying life, but I'm getting a little bit bored watching Netflix, you've got to have that interaction with people. And in business, you're always interacting one way, shape, or form, whether it's with vendors, customers, sales force, et cetera. Got to keep that mind active as you get older, and you'll keep it healthy. It's remember this is not only a machine, but it's also a muscle.
Hmm.
So you got to use it. So that's my encouragement to older people all the time. I always want to encourage us. Gray Panther. I don't have any gray yet, really. I cut it all out, but I qualify, age wise. But yeah, it's just so important to keep going. And man, you get out there back in the business world. Maybe you've been retired for a couple of years. Boy, you're just going to find there's so many exciting things. You're going to wonder, why the heck did I retire? You know.
Well, John, I gotta say thank you. Thank you so much. You really gave us a masterclass on what it's like to pick the mind of somebody who has played the long game, somebody that has been around, that knows that we need to continue that self-development process. That can't stop. We can't stilt it, because if it does, it'll be gone. And I gotta ask, do you have any key thoughts or final takeaways that you would like to leave the audience with? And if they wanted to get in contact with you to learn more about you, what would be the best way for
Sure.
them to do that?
Probably the best way is just go to johnsolleder.com. My little website that my daughter built for me, and people are like, why don't you get a super sophisticated one? Because my daughter built it for me, so it's kind of like was a labor of love. There's not a whole lot on there, but you can reach me on there. And I enjoy hearing from people. And look, maybe you're looking for a side hustle. Okay. If you don't like one of the ones that I am associated with, I know everybody in the direct selling industry. I also know a lot of people in the affiliate space that are always looking for quality people to work with. So maybe that's your thing. Maybe that's not your thing. Maybe it's something else. You just want to pick my brain. Get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you. I love to make new friends, because that's part of life too, is constantly building not only contact capital for business purposes, but contact capital because quality people enhance your life. They make your life more interesting, you know. And I enjoy people, and like I said, I'm still motivated to help people as best I possibly can.
Very good. And, hey, listeners, if this conversation listened to you, share it with somebody who you think needs encouragement for the long road. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen and join our newsletter for extra strategies and insight. Keep sharpening your mind, fueling your growth, and live for more than just the quick wins. Until next time, stay in the game.